Hello fellow YouTube travellers, Jim Jam here, and today I'm answering 10 questions about guitar playing that you have asked me to answer. This is a weekly Q&A show where I share my knowledge and skills to help you with your musical journey. If you've got any questions, leave a comment below and I will answer either through written word or by a video clip like the ones you're about to see. Let's get to it. The question is, supposing I don't know how to read music, how can I find out more quickly what chord I'm playing? Many times when I write music, I meet this situation. So my answer is to learn about different types of chords, so you have a wider chord palette in order to use those chords as a reference when you've got a chord that you don't know the name of. Why this answer? Any chord on the guitar could actually contain notes that correspond to notes of another chord. For instance, we've got a D major triad, first inversion. Now, if we add a D root note on it, this is a D major chord. However, we can also add a B and an F sharp note to make a B minor 7 chord. So here, this first inversion D major triad is actually belonging to 2 chords. Now we've got an extension, for instance a major 9th chord, which is... Now this chord uses a 9th note, which is a 2nd note played an octave higher. It's a 2nd note played an octave higher than the root note. Now it's still got the basic major triad, which is the root, 3rd and 5th. Or here in this chord, it's got the root, 3rd and major 7th. Now it's also got the 9th note. So it's using other notes in the key that it's in to create a different coloured chord. So next question. The Waxy Stargle, that is an amazing name, asks, how to practice with a metronome. Lots of teachers and videos recommend it, but few get granular and give advice into how to actually do it. So I've actually got 5 tips to give you, and these are from an upcoming blog post about how to use a metronome. You can find it in the link below. And the first tip is playing in time. This is really obvious, I know. However, when you're playing with the metronome, you need to play at a tempo that you can actually manage, not one that you can't manage. This is where I think a lot of people may struggle with, because they want to play at a faster tempo. However, they can't actually play at that tempo, but they're still trying to play at that tempo. You need to rein yourself back and play at a speed that you can comfortably manage, so you can ingrain whatever you're playing. Now, once you've got it down and you can, you make no mistakes when playing with that speed, then it's the point to speed up. But first, the first rule is just to start playing in time. And that starts with playing at a speed that you can manage. It's a case of 1 step back, 2 steps forward, which is the case for so many things in life. Yeah, that's my first rule. Tip number 2 is counting, tapping your foot and breathing with the metronome. Let's start with counting the clicks so you have an understanding of where the beats are. So I'm going to be using a metronome online. Let's see what it looks like. Here we are. Here we have our metronome online. The first thing to do is to count the clicks. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, when you do this, you want to tap your foot. Now we're going to tap our foot and count at the same time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if you want, you can actually just tap on the 1 and the 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So down on the 1 and 3 and up on the 2 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's easier to count and you're still tapping your foot in time. Now the last thing is breathing, where we breathe in and breathe out as we play. For instance, with a metronome, we would breathe in on for the first bar and then breathe out for the next bar. For example, and we're counting in our heads and tapping our foot. Now, when you're playing with the rhythm, you can omit the counting part. So that's how I would count it, so to speak. I wouldn't count the numbers, I would just vocalize the rhythm instead. With counting, you can either count the metronome beats or you can vocalize the rhythm that you're going to play. I would count the rhythm to learn it. After a certain point, I would drop the counting because it just hinders your progress in internalizing the rhythm. I would vocalize it or not count it at all instead. Now, if I've got a rhythm and I'm playing it with a metronome, I would breathe in and out and tap my foot and play the rhythm, or vocalize it either out loud or I would say it in my head. For instance, I'll play it and tap my foot and breathe, and this is what it looks like. That is counting, tapping your foot and breathing at the same time. On to the next tip. Tip number 3 is practicing in chunks. The trickiest parts when playing with metronome will be the chord changes. So what you want to do is you want to split up the music that you're going to be playing into manageable chunks. For instance, if I've got a lick like this, I might not want to play the whole lick at once. I might just want to split it up. So for instance, I could split it up into bars, where first bar, with the metronome it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Now, what I'm doing also, I'm still tapping my foot and I'm breathing at the same time. So with a metronome, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. So there as well, at the same time, I was still breathing and tapping my foot to keep in time. Now that was one bar. Now the next bar would be, and then I would practice that with the metronome. And now splitting your music up like this makes learning music so much easier because you're much more able to just focus on a part that you can more easily manage. Now when you've got 2 bars or 2 parts down, you want to link them together. A great way to do this is to play a few notes from the second bar. When you're playing the first bar or the first part, you can play a few notes of the start of the second bar, so the chunks overlap. So for instance, so I've got a few notes from the second bar. And then I can practice the second bar again if I want to. The trick here is that I've already practiced going from the first bar to the second bar, so when I link them together, it's much easier to play them at the same time because I've already practiced that change, and that is the change between bars and parts is the trickiest part because you simply haven't practiced them. That's where a lot of trouble happens. So now we can play both parts together. There we go. Now, tip number 4 is the 1 bar or 2 seconds gap rule. What I really recommend when playing is when you're practicing with a metronome, you've been maybe playing for a while, you've got something on repeat for a while, and then it comes to a point where you need to either break or you've made a mistake, so you basically just start over. When you do this, don't start over straight away. Give yourself either 1 bar or 2 seconds of no playing at all to prepare yourself to play. This small amount of time, it really helps because it gives you like a little mental breather instead of rushing into the next repeat. For instance, we're playing with our metronome. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so there I just made a mistake straight away. I'll repeat it and then I'll play the 1 bar gap. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I made a mistake. Now I think to myself, gap. So I gave myself 1 bar gap. 3, 4. 1. Gap. So I'm giving myself a gap, a 1 bar gap each time. Or you could count it as 2 seconds, depending on whether you're playing a really slow rhythm, maybe 60 BPM, it'll be twice as slow, and you actually find it more efficient to just give yourself 2 seconds gap. You're still giving yourself a mental breather, but you're going at a pace that is suited to your progress with that gap. The gap is tailored to your progress. That's a really, really useful tip, and that will help you with your metronome playing so much so. The last tip number 5, is when to increase or reduce the tempo. So if you can play a piece with the metronome 10 times over and not make any mistakes, then you can increase the tempo towards your desired speed, either by 5 BPM or 10 BPM. Now, if you're playing your musical part at a speed and you keep making mistakes, keep fluffing up, then just reduce it. Just reduce it by 10 or 5 BPM. A small amount, but it will make a massive difference because you're taking that 1 step back and, practice from there. Even if you can play it from there, quite well, just ingrain it more at that stage. And then once you've done that a bit, then increase the tempo, and you'll see the difference by going 1 step back, practicing there a bit, then going 1 step forward. You're able then to quickly ingrain the piece at this new tempo, and then you can take another step forwards to ingrain the piece at an even faster tempo. So you've taken 1 step back, then a step forward, then another step forward. If you are just going to stay at a tempo that you can't really manage, you're not going to get anywhere. Not fast anyway. One, you'll not only get to where you want to be slower, but you'll also ingrain bad practice habits, rushing tendencies, feelings of anxiety when playing or approaching the piece or that specific part. You want to ingrain feelings of confidence, feelings of self-belief in yourself that you can play this part at that tempo. It makes a massive difference to just start where you're at. You're not pushing yourself right to the edge all the time. Take a step back, ingrain it at a slower tempo, then increase the tempo. So, this next question number 3. I've actually answered 2 questions at the same time. So, Hank Moody Motherfucker. Hank Moody Motherfucker asks, would love to learn more about when it fits to use 6th chords, 7th chords, diminished chords, etc. At the moment I'm just using my ear for that, I can't really improvise with those types of chords. And Samuel Oleyewala asks, what are the functions of 7th and 9th chords and how can I apply it to songs? It's all about chord substitutions. This can be one of two things. One where you swap out a chord for another that is either very similar, example, it has many of the same notes and sounds similar, or you add a chord before the original is played, one that progresses naturally into it. So here are 3 examples of these 2 points: chord extensions, secondary dominants, and chord suspensions. A chord extension is where you can swap out any triad, like a major or a minor chord, with an extension by adding notes onto the core notes of a chord. Because the original pattern of notes is still there, the harmony of that triad still exists in our extended chords. Some common chord extensions include a 6th, 7th, 9th, 11th and a 13th. As long as the extended chord contains the same triad that we added our notes onto, then this will work for any chord progression. This principle also works in reverse, where we can swap out our extended chord and use a triad instead of it, because the triad chord is still there. So for instance, we've got our 6th, 7th, our 9th, our 11th, and our 13th. So secondary dominant substitution. This is where you target the chord that you want to spice up and add a dominant 7th chord, either a 5th above or a 4th below that chord. This adds a second layer of dominant chords to the key, thus being called a secondary dominant. They're played between your target chord and the one just before. You can either move the chords around to take up more bar space, or you can fit all the chords within the same amount of bars it took for the original progression. Now, the reason secondary dominants are interesting is because they use notes outside of the key, and then resolve to notes inside the key. It's like adding another colour to a drawing that blends with the existing colours that are already there. An extended method of this is to stack dominants of the secondary dominants. You just basically keep going backwards, which is also called backcycling. So for instance, we have a dominant of C major chord, which is a G7. We can add more layers of, we can add the dominant of that dominant. So the dominant of G7 would be D7, then to G, and to C. Then we can have the dominant of D7, which is A7. So now we've got A7, D7, G7, C. And we can keep going this back as far as we want. Here you would actually replace the chords in your progression with these extended dominants. So for instance, if I've got A, D minor, C, I would instead have E, A, D, G, C. So imagine you're riding a bike backwards, except there's no bike, you're just on the floor with these chords. The analogy isn't really important here. Yeah, onwards! So the last part is chord suspensions. This is where you replace any major chord with a sus2 or a sus4 chord. A sus2 is a major chord, a major triad, that has the major third note replaced with a second note. For instance, in an A sus2, we start with an A major chord, which contains an A major triad. Now we replace this third note with a second note. So now the triad is first, fifth and second, instead of first, fifth and third. Or the first, third and fifth. Now we've got the first, second and fifth. Yeah. Now the sus4 is a similar principle, where you replace the major third with a fourth note. You can find details on the PDF below. sus4. There's also in the links below a table for the chord substitutions as well as chord diagrams to get really stuck into. I hope these chord substitutions will help you to spice up your chord progressions and make a korma like a tikka masala or even a foul. That would be nice. Yeah. Now, to really learn about the sound of each chord, what I recommend is using arpeggios, which is what we're going to get into the next question. Gilmore Bro asks, being someone who can no longer afford to take lessons, I've been left to scour the internet for the information I'm looking for, without really knowing what topics to research first, or what the next logical step is after I've learned something useful. My current short-term goal is to learn to improvise over jazz chord progressions competently. What I would be eternally grateful for would be if someone could give me some sort of roadmap for taking my playing abilities from can playing key but only when poking at the pentatonic or major scale, to not visibly bored when playing. Anything in this vein would be hugely appreciated. Soloing is when you play notes one after the other to create an engaging melody to harmonise with the chords. Now, chord tone soloing is when you target the notes of a chord to further emphasise the underlying chord structure, what chords are being played. Now, using chord substitutions in your chord tone soloing helps you to create more engaging solos than if you were just to play with one scale or just to play over, with the same notes. So the roadmap I recommend here is learn about chord tone soloing, learning about the arpeggios of each chord and using chord tone soloing concepts to improvise with them. Then also learning about chord substitution. Now, the basic concept of chord tone soloing is to play the strong notes of a chord, or the chord tones, as it were. So for instance, in a C major 9 chord, our chord tones would be the notes that we're playing. The 1, 3, major 7 and the major 9. So in a solo, you would play those notes. So here's an example of what I mean. We've got a D major 7, E minor, F sharp minor, and an E minor chord progression. I'm going to be using the chord tones of each chord to solo with. In a D major 7, for example, we've got our root, 3rd, 7th, and 5th. In our E minor chord, we've got our root, minor 3rd, 5th, an extra note, which is a 6th, and then a root again. In our F sharp minor, we've got our minor 7, root, 5, and minor 3, flat 3. And then to E minor, we've got a little hammer-on lick. Starting on the 5th. Then going to the 4th, 3rd, and root. Here's what it sounds like in practice. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that was chord tone soloing. For the chord substitution part, that's where you would use chord substitutions in place of your chord progressions, and then use chord tone soloing to target those new colourful notes that the chord substitutions bring in. For example, I could replace the D major 7 with a D major 9. There's many different ways you can do this. I recommend just first practicing chord tone soloing over progressions you know, then learning about chord substitutions, and then once you've created some chord progressions or learnt some with chord substitutions, practice chord tone soloing over those. That'll make your soloing, much better. I think it's a massive area to explore as well, and it will take your playing beyond what you can currently play, and I think you'll be really excited with your playing. Just adding some new colour into what you're already doing. Thank you for your answer, and see you again soon. Question number 4 comes from Comre Chinaman. Comre Chinaman asks, could you make a video of some of your favourite arpeggios used to link one position of a pentatonic scale to another? I've got 2 pentatonic arpeggio patterns for you, one in a minor. So I've got 2 pentatonic arpeggios, one in a minor and one in a major. Here's what they sound like. That was the minor arpeggio, so here's the major. There you go. Keep in mind when you're soloing, when changing scale positions, try to always use a box shape for the fingers. The hand stays where it is, and only the fingers move. That's the concept of a box position, where one finger has each fret, and if you need to move up or down one fret, use as minimal movement with the hand as possible. So your first finger might go down a fret, or your third finger might go down a fret. Can you see how my hand doesn't really move much? So it stays the same, moves once, moves again. My fingers are doing the majority of the work. So it's one finger per fret and your hand moves to different positions on the neck. So our next question comes from RSGVJ. Hey Jim, I've been playing guitar for 6 years and it's turned into my favourite hobby/passion, but I've never had an effective practice regime. Since day one, my practice time has been exclusively devoted to learning songs and playing them on repeat. Until recently, I never knew there was any problem with this. I thought it was the way guitar was learned. I have hours of free time to practice every week, but I have no idea where to start on building a solid way to practice and improve. Do you have any advice for an intermediate player looking to start practicing in a more effective way? Thank you. Side note, I have a solid knowledge of jazz chords and theory built up. I'm hoping to start learning better fretting and picking techniques for fingerstyle classical guitar. So first of all, practicing songs is a great way to learn because it forces you to learn techniques that you otherwise wouldn't have learned. If you really enjoy the style of learning, keep it up, man. What would be great alongside this is some music theory, because you would be better able to identify what you are playing and as well as make connections between the songs that you know, so you're able to make up ideas of your own more easily. For a practice schedule, first identify where you want to be in your playing. You might want to have a full-time musical career, you might want to play in a band, you might want to learn specific songs, or you might want to be able to create your own songs, create an album, work with producers, go gigging. Just learn where you want to be with your music, and then you can have that goal and work backwards from your end point in order to figure out the steps that you need to take in order to get there. Start broad. So for instance, if you want to gig in London, think about what that would look like, what you would be playing. Maybe you would have a set list of half of your own stuff, half of cover material, or all of your own stuff, or all cover material. Either way, identify the songs that you want to learn. If it's your own stuff, then it's 10 songs that you want to make. So then think a step back. Okay, what would be the previous step from gigging in London? Maybe it would be writing the 10th song. What would be the previous song from that? Writing the 9th song, then so on, so forth, till you get to the first song, and you think, okay, what can I do to write the first song? Or learn the first song. If it's a cover, then go online and learn it. If it's a hard song that you want to learn, then think, maybe either you put in lots of time to practice this song, or you learn an easier song first to build up your skills to that song. If it's creating your own, then think about just putting in the time and effort to make your own song, learning songwriting techniques, collaborating with other musicians maybe. So then think about what is the one thing you can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary at that moment in time. Also image ahead. What's the one thing you can do in the next 6 months to reach your goal? Now think about these things and write them down. Bear in mind, it will probably change along the way, but your broad goal may stay the same. What matters is that you're working on enjoying music at the moment you're in. If you don't know what you want to learn, explore. Expose yourself to loads of different genres, different songs, different artists, different venues. Just give yourself a taste of everything and find out what you like and what you don't like. And then, keep on exploring always, I think, is a good tip. But stick to what you enjoy, what you enjoy the most. Stick to that, deepen the enjoyment, and work through the challenges you need to work through in order to really enjoy those things. For instance, songwriting, many people, they have a kind of fear about putting their own stuff out there. It's part of yourself, it's quite vulnerable. To do so, you can get a lot of critics criticising your work, as well as a lot of praise. It's just working through those things, because at the end of the day, it's all a journey. We're all here to learn. Talk to other musicians, that's why I'm here as well, to help others, learn from others. It's much better when we do it together. Every person is different, it's okay to make mistakes. I'd recommend focus on enjoying the journey, finding what you want, and working towards it. The Bloody Mummers asks, how do people play so cleanly without accidentally brushing the wrong strings, etc., especially when doing vibrato, bends, hammer-ons and pull-offs? I'm okay, but my technique feels so sloppy compared to the guys on that pedal show, Andertons, etc. The one thing I recommend to get your tone sounding clean is to record yourself playing. The feedback that you get from recording yourself playing is immensely helpful, because it helps you identify what you sound like rather than what you think you sound like. There's very different things. When you identify where you're hitting the strings, micromanage your movements. Go, get a notebook, write down what you're practicing, write down the areas you need to work on, the specific parts, then practice those parts and get them sounding clean. Once you get them sounding clean without metronome, get them sounding clean with a metronome, so you're able to play it in time, because it's a totally different ball game. It takes a lot of time and patience to get your strings sounding, clean. But yeah, that's what I recommend. Record yourself and hear where you're going wrong, because then you can identify those parts and just sit there and, practice those parts at a very, very slow tempo until you can play them cleanly. Doesn't matter how slow you're going, the main part is to just play it without brushing the other strings. Once you can do that at a very slow tempo, or just as slow as you can go down to, then build up speed and then get it to the speed that you want. Zoidbergle asks, thank you. I enjoy playing black metal, the power chord parts, but struggle with tremolo, especially when switching from one string to another. If you happen to know any good little exercises to help with this? ? So here are two exercises I recommend. The first is for alternate picking, and the second is for economy picking. Economy picking is when it's similar to alternate picking, but when you skip a string, if your pick is going in the same direction, then you keep it going that way. For instance, if I'm playing down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, and then on the end of the up, if my next note is on the E string, my pick is going in that direction because it's just played an upstroke. So I continue to play an upstroke on the E string. So now I'm going up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And then when I go back, because I'm going up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, I go down to the A string. My pick is already going in that direction because we just finished with a downstroke. So I then play a downstroke again and start with a downstroke. That is economy picking. You can use it, you can not. It's up to you what you want to learn. My first exercise for you is for the speed and accuracy of tremolo picking. I recommend playing single note melodies at a tempo that you can manage, because one, you need to build up the stamina in order to play these melodies over a long period of time, and two, you want to play them accurately. It's really important to build up your confidence in playing these melodies at a fast rate. So, when you play it at a slow tempo, you'll give yourself more space to hit the notes accurately. Once you can do this, increase your speed over the next few weeks. Now, this is only for single note playing, and I recommend just getting it down on a single note string, because it's far easier to do this than with string skipping. Once you feel confident there, then practice string skipping with your melodies. So here's a simple exercise on alternate picking on a single string. Now Now here's an exercise for alternate string picking. And I've included the same exercise for economy string picking for you. I don't really do economy string picking, but I know that it can be helpful for some players, so I've included it here for you. Practice it, give it a go. If you like it, then fair enough to switch back to alternate picking. Each person is different. Yeah. So, next question. Garrett Murray asks, I'm having a really hard time remembering the root notes for the power chords down the fretboard. Is there an easy way to remember? I always have to go out and check the note circle. What I recommend is memorising the natural notes of the 6th and 5th strings, as well as the root shapes, in order to be able to identify where those natural notes are all across the neck. This will mean that any chord that you're playing, you'll be able to identify the root note very easily. Because even though you're just memorising the natural notes, you can go down one fret to get to the flat, or you can go up a fret to get to the sharp. And that way you basically have very easy access to learning all of the notes on the fretboard. So here are the natural notes of the 5th and 6th strings, as well as the root shapes. Here you can see the natural notes. We've got E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, and on the 5th string we've got A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and A. Now for the root shapes, this is based on the cage system, by the way. Our first shape is here on the 5th and 2nd string. Our next shape is on the 5th and 3rd string. Our third shape is on the 3rd 1st, as well as on the 6th and 3rd. Fourth shape is on the 6th and 4th strings, as well as on the 4th and 1st. Last shape is on the 4th and 2nd strings. And then you come back all the way to shape 1. So spend your time learning the natural notes and the root shapes, and this will help you to identify the root note of any chord that you may be playing very easily. So the final question comes from James Garcia, and he asks, do you think guitar players like B.B. King knew anything about guitar theory, and is it possible for a guitar player to be just as good of a guitar player without it? So I don't know how B.B. King learned to play, and my answer is yes, I think it's very possible. I think that when you play by ear, you learn your own style by picking up other people's songs, creating your own melodies just literally by experimentation, listening to what sounds good. You develop a very good ear for what actually sounds good in music. Theory is a great way to identify what you're playing. However, when you're playing music, it's not the theory that is making the music, it's you, the artist. You know, when you listen to a concert or someone playing, you don't really analyse, oh, you know, they're playing a C major, then A, and then a D major 7. Usually, most of the time, you're just sitting there enjoying the experience, the flow of the music, you know, letting the melodies and the rhythms and the harmonies combine into a lovely audible experience. Afterwards, maybe, yeah, you talk about it, and you might think, oh, wow, you know, he did that trick there that I know or that I learned the other day. But music in itself isn't, the experience of music isn't described, it's felt. And so you can be a musician, very good musician, without theory, without describing the experience. You're just playing music in another way. You've just learned it in another way. You've learned by sound. It's really similar to learning a language. You learn the sounds of a language. You know, you might also learn how to write the language, but generally you learn to speak by listening to others and then making your own sounds until you can clearly communicate your own voice to others. If anyone thinks that those that know theory are better than those that don't, then they are creating a barrier for connecting with other musicians, and essentially a lot of musicians, because there's always going to be someone that knows more theory than you, or someone that knows less theory than you. Doesn't mean that they're better or worse, it just means they know less theory or they know more theory. When I connect with other musicians, I don't really judge them based on their theoretical knowledge. I try not to judge them at all. I feel what it's like to be with them when we play. Do we have a great time? Awesome. If not, awesome if we do. The love of music is what you should focus on, not how well you can describe what you're playing. I promote music theory heavily because I think it's a great gateway to learning new ideas and to expressing yourself, to expressing your love of music. However, it's really important to note that the love of music is not in theory. Theory just helps you to articulate your love more clearly. I hope that answered your question. If you've got any questions about the answer, please feel free to message me. Thank you. See you later.